What is a sexual immorality that is worse than wife swapping and having sex with whom or whatever you want, of any sex? Just having sex with man, woman, animal, um, married women, married men, unmarried men. Is there any sexuality worse than that? I'm not going to include rape in here, although it's implied that pedophilia is in that as well, although that was different in the ancient world. What's worse than that as of sexual immorality, according to some prominent people in the early church? Abstinence. Incorrect abstinence. And those advocating abstinence. Now, it's not those people who don't desire women or somebody of the opposite sex. There are people who aren't homosexuals that don't have a sex drive. Now, modern day, we tend to think this is unnatural and that there is something wrong. That's not necessarily how they viewed it in the ancient world. If you can remain without being married, good for you. That's the view of the early church. But restricting marriage or believing that you're getting more points or that it's easier for God to love you or for you to enter into the kingdom of heaven, whatever that may be, no. And in fact, those who believe or preach that are committing the worst sexual. They are more deviant in their sexuality than someone who shares wives or is omnisexual. I'll give you a quote from a very prominent church father who, I'll leave it as a mystery this time, and who said this about being abstinent. If I can find it. Why do I always miss things at the when talking about people who are basically forbidding marriage and saying those who are without sex are much higher, or this very advocating this these celibate lives of that there's somehow an easier way to get into heaven, or that even somebody denying. I mean, while reading this, you're like, this guy's talking about someone who actually desires women and believes that it's a part of Christianity, or it's good in Christianity to stop that desire. Instead of getting married, somebody who desires women and doesn't get married and lives an abstinent life, this is what he says. So somebody who is sexually attracted to women, who is of a marriageable age, and turns to abstinence and chastity, which is no chastity to this person, who basically won't have sex because they think it's a part of Christianity, or advocate it to be part of Christianity, is living lewder lives than the most uncontrolled heathen, bringing blasphemy upon his name. They're deceitful workers, and they shall be like their works. They shall be basically dead. Living lewder lives than the most uncontrollable heathens. Now, the person that was writing this was a time when Gnosticism was in its heyday. And the church was very skeptical of celibate men. and with correct reason too. And I think we're at a time where it might be a good idea to restrict. You can't really restrict celibacy, but to restrict monasticism. Now, again, I have no authority. I can't do this. But I think we're at a point in the history of the church where it might be healthy for the church to restrain monasticism. Because of Gnosticism had not it's a natural outgrowth of, I mean, it's easy to slip in, just as it's easy to slip in the universal salvation or legalism or license, all these things on the road when you're traveling down the road of Christianity, living in the church. If as soon as you turn down that road of permanent celibacy, the danger of Gnosticism lurks right behind you. Especially when you're praying more than people and you're embracing more and more of an ascetic life. Because those actions can bring about the beliefs of Gnosticism, just as Gnosticism brings about, the belief in Gnosticism brings about those actions. Just as, you know, if somebody's claiming to be a Christian and they practice a very hedonistic lifestyle, they're going to make their Christianity fit with that, and they're going to endorse license. Or if they're promoting license, it's easy for them to fall into that behavior, because there's nothing stopping them except their own whim, basically. And I think people tend to forget this. We tend to not understand a lot of things that we read. Not even read, but if you're reading a few of the church fathers, you can freak you out. Just when you read many of them, you say, wait, what are the common points? Right? And the church fathers say, some of them say things like Christ was not male or female, or the Father is neither both mother and father. And their intention in saying that, and what they mean when they flesh it out, they're correct. Now, is that allowed to be said now? No, it's not. But in their understanding of their time, they're correct. Because it's the meaning behind the words. It's not as if you can string a magical sentence together that could save you or damn you. The silliness of the blasphemy challenge that the atheists were doing, or the sinner's prayer of the evangelicals, they're both silly, and they're not even a commentary on Christianity. They're just silly. The blasphemy challenge cannot damn you to hell, and the sinner's prayer means nothing if there is no, I mean, it's the faith in Christ. It's the being regenerated in Christ. It's all these things. It's baptism. It's the Eucharist. It's walking it out. And it's people say, well, I don't try all the time. And even if you don't want to try, go and be repentant when you take the Eucharist. That will do more for you. Stop doing all this works crap. Well, I'm not trying to try, or I'm not. Get out of your head. Go to liturgy, take the Eucharist in proper form. Go to confession as often as you're told by your parish priest, and stay in communion with the church. Now, I myself am a hypocrite in I'm not a hypocrite in telling people to do this. This is good advice. But this is an area that I fail in, and many times I think I'm too stained with evil and sin to take the Eucharist, and I stay away from it out of fear of just consuming the Eucharist and dying of cancer, which is not a common view among the Orthodox living in America, but it is or just even not wanting to defile the Eucharist with my body, which again, no Orthodox should say that, because the idea that well, that can go into later. And just as that's a bad thing for me to do, right? Well, there's some monastics who will go to confession all the time and take the Eucharist either once a year or once in a few years, and that view makes them more holy. The infant that's taking the Eucharist, that their parents are bringing them up and they're taking the Eucharist every Sunday, who's never been to confession before, is more Orthodox than a monastic that holds himself from the Eucharist. Because no 19th, 18th, or 17th century teachings can trump the first 1,000 years of Christianity. Just because it's a heresy that's a few hundred years old, doesn't mean it's correct. Well, that's what they did before us. Well, again, yeah, we follow the historic church, but we always have to be aware of infections. I mean, what about those who come into the church when it was Arian? Well, the church has been Arian for 100 years, and this is the church now. It's Arian. No, they should side with Athanasius and Nicholas and Spiridon. And when obey your bishop, listen to your bishop. But if he ever strays into a blasphemy or heresy, you are not under him anymore. You're not allowed to listen to him, because you listen to the church and to actual bishops. If he says something about the Holy Trinity, if he blasphemes the Holy Trinity, if he denies the deity or humanity of Christ, you are no longer Orthodox or being a servant of Christ or a servant of the church or even part of the church, while still being in communion with him. And the Orthodox people knew this. After the Council of Florence, they executed mobs of people. The Orthodox Church rose up with one voice to execute the bishop, and one of the only bishops left was Mark Ephesus. They were tying ropes around their neck and throwing them off balconies. They were disemboweling them in the streets, because it's an infection, because it's the head. The fish rots from the head. Now, I'm not saying bishops should be killed or anybody should be disemboweled or anybody should be executed or harmed in any way. But the Orthodox back then knew how important it was. And this potentially could bring them out of Muslim rule. They were building this bridge with the Catholic Church so the church would come back in with all this gold and money from the New World and bombard and invade once again the Muslim world, or at least save Constantinople, or regain it, and it was no. Not going to happen. Rather, the turban of the Saracen, the turban of the Turk, than the mitre of the Bishop of Rome. So, be obedient to your bishop. If your bishop speaks blasphemy, you're not allowed to say, well, I need to be obedient to the bishop. You're not allowed to do that, or you're cut from the church. And these are by the canons and the creeds that say this.